Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of February the 5th till 11th, 2024. We have quite chaotic, I do believe that's the most appropriate keyword for this week ahead of us, but not necessarily only from a chaotic in a bad sense and doomy and gloomy and disaster and war and all of that kind of perspective, because there is also a lot of positivity, a lot of creational energy, and a lot of ingenious problem solving energy in the sky. So just like Aquarius, it's gonna feel very dual, and perhaps that is the biggest challenge. How to exist in this duality, how to find, and I don't want to say comfort, but maybe coping when our comfort zones are almost like struck by a lightning storm. It's not gonna be easy, but it's gonna be full of potential and full of truth, full of epiphanies, full of realizations, even though some of those might be very hard, even though some of those might be life changing in a radical way, where we finally see why something is not working and it's definitely not going to work in the future. And that might determine us to change directions, that might determine us to set a totally new course in our inner GPS of where it is that we want to navigate in life. But of course, let me share my screen and let us look at these energies together. Now, this might be a little bit long because there is so much happening in the sky. And usually my horoscopes are dedicated to those people who learn astrology. So this is why I'm going to speak about certain aspects in greater detail. However, one of the most key aspects this week is the sun squaring Uranus. So, tumultuous information that makes you anxious, stresses you out. So, if you're not really ready for this barrage of information, I would rather suggest to stop here and not listen to this horoscope. However, if you want to learn a little bit about these aspects, then please stay tuned. So we see that we are on the 5th of February, and the beginning of the week is already very relevant, very significant, because this is where we have Mercury conjunct Pluto, and this is so very important. Mercury was at this energetic degree of Capricorn, which is also part of this conjunction, but it makes it an outer sign conjunction. So when Mercury is in Anaretic Capricorn, this is where it highlights everything in our lives, collectively speaking as well, just put it into context, that simply needs to change, that simply cannot stay the same way. And this is where it doesn't even matter what the change might uh, require from us, but it really highlights what cannot go on anymore. Now, of course, this doesn't mean immediately. This just means the awareness. This just means that our minds and mental sphere has to accept this truth. A few moments later, astrologically speaking, of course, it's already an Aquarius at that 0 degree, and this is extra special. Now, of course, Mercury gets to the 0 degree of Aquarius every single year, but this year with Pluto stepping more permanently into that, this is where we truly get face to face with the new, with the unexpected, with the uncharted territory that we need to navigate on. And this is where Mercury has to become aware of the Aquarian expression of the very same energy that it held in the outer sign conjunction. And the Aquarian expression is very simple. What in our lives needs to progress, evolve, go further, even if that means taking risks, even if that means jumping out of our comfort zone, and which area or what in our life has to stay the same. And why? Well, because we must not forget, and this is where most astrologers, including me, forget this. Aquarius is co-ruled by Saturn. So, of course, in more modern expression, Aquarius is all about the freedom, the future, the new, the next, the community, the interhuman connection, humanitarianism, and all of that, the more Uranian expression. But Aquarius is also strongly Saturnian. And Aquarius was that part of the sky where Saturn could be more gentle than in its main sign of Capricorn. So Aquarius is also representatives of those core values or structures or whatever that must not change. That, and why must they not change? Because they are an integrate, permanent part of us. Without those structures, the future, no matter how Uranian it is, it will not make sense. Now, let me give you a concrete example. If Uranus and, of course, Aquarius has a lot to do with humanitarianism, right? The human spirit, the human morality, the human makeup, basically, is not going to upgrade. I mean, it's not going to disappear. It has to be permanent because the human spirit is the same as it was 10,000 years ago, and it's gonna and has to be the same in the next 100, 200 years. The loving nature, the compassionate nature, the everything that makes humanitarianist cannot simply vanish, cannot change. That's the Saturnian expression. Would it change, we're no longer human. You know what I mean? So Mercury will also highlight that. And of course, Pluto. What very important, big, stark truths have to come to our awareness. This is where certain things we cannot sweep under the rug, we cannot ignore, we cannot bypass, we cannot hope away because that's false hope. And Mercury with Pluto will simply reveal this to us, especially that Mercury is taking the place of the sun, because not so long ago, it was the sun who conjuncted Pluto, and together they moved into the sign of Aquarius. So that revealed things to us or started a process of revelation. Mercury helps us process that, even if that is not so easy. Pluto, which hopes, and this is where, remember, the anaretic Capricorn Pluto and the 0-degree Aquarius Pluto and Mercury alike, which hopes and dreams and aspirations and things that once we thought are so important and crucial to us are out of the window. Why? Because the world changed, the collective changed. Our relation to the world and collective has changed. Capricorn, top-down authority. All you need to do is look at what's happening. The big picture, not the nitty-gritty details, because that's depressing. On the world stage, this is where name a place, a country perhaps, where there isn't one way or another a revolution going on, a rebellion, where the top-down authority, politicians, leaders, kings, whatever, are not being contested by the people, or in the, let's say, the best case scenario, their duties are being reminded very, very intensely. Like, do it already. You promise this and that, go and execute it, because the time is definitely now. So this is the restless. But on the other hand, the Aquarian expression, the Plutonian Aquarian expression, this is where what needs to be part of our lives, which hopes and aspirations do resonate, do align with where the collective is going. So, these elements are so very important. Now, what this means on the world stage is obvious. I'm not even going to speak about that now in great detail. But personally, this is where you need to put it into context. What in your life holds a power over you that you say no, no more? No, may this be a person, a relationship, a boss, a job, a career choice, a soul path, even. That has to transform. I don't want to necessarily say end, but transform, get realigned. And what in your life is like a void? Which part of that void needs to be filled in with something? The creational part. So whatever is going to be filled in, that's where you will have a great power, a personal power. So this is what this Pluto and Mercury conjunction is doing. And again, because this is the first conjunction after Pluto permanently entered Capricorn, this is so, so, so important. More important than any future Mercury Pluto conjunctions in the sign of Aquarius. So I find this very, very relevant. Now, on the other hand, also at the very beginning of the week, Sun sextiles the moon. This is how we begin the week. And I'm just going to show this to you. Sun sextiling the moon, a beautiful energy. Because, okay, this is heavy, this is hard, this is not easy. How are we even going to figure it out? But there is an inner strength here. The moon in Sagittarius, this is like a divine hope. This is where, like, let me give you an example. Everything is lost, yet still you know that life has to go on, that you're not defeated, that even if what you hope for, Sagittarius, is invisible, you cannot see it, you cannot know it, you cannot figure it out, yet it still exists in some part of corner of your soul, and the sheer feeling is enough to push you forward. So this is really, really beautiful. Another energy at the very as we begin the week is Mars holding a sextile with Neptune. Now, of course, this is really useful in so very many ways, artistically, alchemically, to get things done. Because Mars in Capricorn, very powerful, exalted, it completes its mission. It is able to have that strong singularity that it needs to be very, very diligent, responsible, and serious. And these are not specific to Mars. So, but in sextile Neptune, this is where your inner being, your psyche helps you. This is where you're aligned to the mission. So, of course, it is progressing. Of course, it is getting things done. But of course, this is very valid in so very many ways artistically, where that impossible image in your mind that you could not find a shape and form to put it into, like plastic artists, painters, or whatever, all of a sudden you find the best methodology, or poetry, or music, or whatever. However, this has a dark side to it. Because why? A sextile is an empowering aspect. It empowers both the criminal and both the cop. You know what I mean? It doesn't discriminate. So Neptune illusion, deception, Capricorn, the power that it may have over some people. So this is where this aspect is also good for lies, for pulling wool over our eyes, smoke and mirrors, hiding things, hiding the truth in the most ingenious ways. So absolutely, that's also part of the picture. So we must be, and there is another aspect, but this aspect runs through all week and basically most of February. And this is like a saving grace. Jupiter's sextile to Saturn. I spoke about this in previous horoscopes, and I'm also going to say a few words now. This is the grounding energy. This is where Jupiter in Taurus. Taurus is earthly, down, very, very down to earth. Jupiter in Taurus is like the laws of nature. What feels natural, what feels right, what feels, aligned with, again, nature. And Saturn in the sign of Pisces is exactly the realm of the spirit, realm of fantasy, realm of the psyche, realm of, our inner world. So the sextile where we are aligned with something natural, that is like grounding, that is like empowering, and that is what gives us truer hope, very true hope. So this is really, really beautiful. Another energy that we begin the week with, now this is a bit extreme. And let me show this to you, because I have to put on the asteroids for this. So we have Mars squaring Eris. Now, this is not a very easy energy because this means business. Mars, very powerful in the sign of Capricorn, and it also rules the sign of Aries. Eris, very comfortable and powerful in the sign of Aries. So these two planets clash. Now, of course, according to the Ptolemaic rules, it is Eris who is the much stronger planet. However, Mars is not backing away because it's exalted. So it is facing Eris. Mars in Capricorn, top-down authority. Eris in the sign of Aries, people, individuals, my rights, my sovereignty, my will, my way. And at least according to the principles of democracy, well, politicians, top-down authority, theoretically are in the service of people, right? And Eris takes that seriously. Eris takes that principle to extremes. So outside philosophy, this means very powerful protests. This means clashes. This means civil war. Like, let me remind you, and I might not be able to give you an exact date for this, but from 2020 to 2022, this ongoing square between Eris and Pluto, of course, this was Pluto, not Mars, but Pluto is Mars's higher octave, so it's kind of valid. So many protests have been taken place. Like, for example, one of the most iconic was when the White House was besieged. Another very relevant protest was when, and I'm not really sure which country, people actually got into the parliament and broke the windows and everything, and the politicians had to there and then say, okay, we'll do what you want. So it wasn't even a negotiation. They had to change that law, which angered people, etc., etc. Now Mars activates the very same energy, but this is a little bit more personal. So you can imagine that this is going to cause very powerful clashes. But top-down authority is also going to be very serious. So if possible, if you are someone who is taking part in those protests or whatever, accept that, expect that the enforcement, the law enforcement, whatever, may that be military or whatever, is not going to be gentle. It's going to be quite Yeah. So yes, that and this aspect is gonna run most of the week, even though it's more exact at the beginning of the week. Thank goodness for that. And another energy which I find so very interesting, and this is a minor energy. This is where are you? Ceres. No, just a second, please. Ceres is at Anaretic Sagittarius. Pallas Athena at the same time is at Anaretic Scorpio. Ceres and Anaretic Sagittarius, it will very, very, very seriously question how religion feeds our soul. Because isn't that basically the use of religion, even? But this is where if religion feeds hatred, intolerance, aggression, and much more confusion than we normally would have, if religion feeds Ceres something totally unnatural, then this is a moment where we might expect heavy anti-religious movements. But anti-religion doesn't mean anti-spiritual. It is actually just anti-religion, where there's absurd rules and stuff like that. So people are not going to contest the spirituality of it, but the absurdity of religion. At the same time, Pallas Athena in Anaretic Scorpio. Pallas Athena is goddess of wisdom, tactics. She can be a very, very cerebral energy. Scorpio, the down-to-earth facts. This is where people are going to contest history. People are going to contest archaeology. People are going to say, I don't believe you anymore. I I question science in that sense because archaeology isn't like a Uranian science, even though it has so many Uranian elements. So we will see certain gestures which we never ever saw before. This is where masses of people are just simply going to say, I don't trust your history lesson. I don't trust the academic world. I don't trust your research. I don't trust your science. Ceres, I don't trust your religion. I don't trust your interpretation of the Holy Scripture, regardless what scripture that is. I don't trust you, as in an authority of religion, interpreting spirituality for me. So, yep, this is quite a very, and also, I'm gonna mention this so I don't have to later on in this horoscope. On the 9th of February, almost like simultaneously, Pallas Athena and Ceres change signs. So, which means that Pallas Athena is moving into Sagittarius, in a way taking Ceres's place, and Ceres is gonna move into Capricorn. So that is where Pallas Athena, sorry, Ceres and Capricorn. This is where what feeds top-down authority, because chances are famine is gonna be starting in a very symbolic sense. Although, as Pallas Athena, for example, sorry, no, Ceres was on top of the galactic center and it squared Neptune. That was like real famine. That is, and I cannot mention the places because this new trend where they just block out everything that is against the what they want people to hear on social media and on the internet. So I'm not going to mention the place, but that meant proper, like a real life famine. And that in mass, Sagittarius in mass, that doesn't, that shouldn't even exist in our day and age. And, square Neptune, how that manifested simply shocked me personally because Ceres, the food, etc., etc. Neptune compassion, humanitarian aid, of course. And it was actually citizens who blocked humanitarian aid. If the people block humanitarian aid from other people, this is where Capricorn isn't even involved. Well, what does that say? What does that say to the divine? That's shameful. That's anyway. If I continue with this, I'm going to be taken off YouTube in a few seconds. So everyone should make up their own, not necessarily opinion, but how they feel about these gestures. But the astrology of it is playing out. Anaretic series. Anaretic is the shadow degree, critical degree, when the symbolism of the planet is most extreme. Sometimes the ugliest expression, Ceres, famine, and Neptune blocking aid. Because this highlights Neptune's duality. Because the astrological community does not have a great deal of experience with Neptune, because it was only recently integrated into astrology. Some might say, well, what do you mean recently? We have so very many years. Yes, but that's in an astrological way, that's recently. So, of course, Neptune, art, beauty, higher octave of Venus, the divine source, infinite compassion, Christ consciousness, forgiveness, dissolving into spirit. Yes, yes, yes. But the opposite of that, the unholy spirit, is also Neptune. The bad kind of illusion. When we think that the divine supports our darker feelings, if that makes sense. Well, it is true, because the divine is supporting it, but a certain aspect of the divine which uses us to highlight how very illusionary our actions are if they are misaligned with its higher expression. So we see Neptune's darkest expressions playing out, where sometimes Neptune can be more extreme in its harm, let's say, even though this is very incorrect, the terminology that I use, than Pluto. Like, let me give you an example. The Fukushima disaster in 2011. Neptune was at anaretic degree of Aquarius technology. Let's not consider the explosion and the radioactivity. Let's say that's more like in the domain of anaretic Uranus, at the same time in the sign of Pisces. Water, the sea, blowing up, etc., etc. But anaretic Neptune was where the elderly had to volunteer to die out of radioactive bombardment. I don't know how to say this, because they had to clean up. They said to the young, you have all your life ahead of you. Don't go in there. I'll have to go because I'm expandable. I'm already a pensioner. And this happened in Japan. Now, on one hand, duality of Aquarius, Neptune and Aquarius, that is the epitome of compassion and maturity as a soul from the elderly generation. But at the same time, how cruel, how infinite that Pluto is not that cruel. Let me give you a Plutonian expression of infinite cruelty, the Hiroshima bombings. But that happened in a second, in a second. That happened so fast that I don't even know if anyone could, those who have perished could suffer. Maybe those who survived suffered more, but that's Pluto, you know what I mean? Neptune inflicted like a pure psychological torture to both generations, because the elderly had to, even though this didn't happen in a literal sense, because they received protective gear and stuff like that, but the gesture of it. And in the first days of the disaster, this actually took place. The elderly, or those people who said, I'm signing up to potentially die here. I know what I'm doing. I'll volunteer for this. Those people have to process this, while their relatives had to process this another way. because my dad, mom, or whoever it is, So this is where Neptune is showing us its true colors. Okay, thank you for this very small astrological interpretation moment. So now oh, wait, I have more. So another aspect that I need to speak about that is very active at the beginning of the week, and this also is a bit nitty-gritty because it's a minor, insignificant aspect, but for some people, this might be life-changing in a positive way, so we need to include it. So you see here Juno, asteroid of partnerships in the sign of Virgo. Now, in the sign of Virgo, of course, it needs to analyze, not everyone is compatible with me, and it's retrograde. So it really, really embodies all the bad lessons of the past. Who disappointed me? How was I incompatible with this, that, and that? And when I say partnerships, okay, mostly romantic and in a one-to-one partnership way, but in Virgo it can also be contracts, work, etc., etc. Trines Uranus. So this is where if we think outside of the box, well, so it may come as a surprise. Unexpected partnerships, unexpected romance. Why romance? Well, it's romance because Taurus, Venus's nighttime expression, and it is earthly romance. And speaking about Venus, the ruler of all of this, Taurus is actually starting to build up a trine with Uranus. So Venus is actually there, you know what I mean? And if she builds up a trine with Uranus, that means she's also building up a trine with Juno, a grand trine. Just that at the beginning of the week, it is Juno's trine with Uranus that is more exact. The Venus trine is not all that exact, but how truly wonderful is this? This can be unexpected romance, unexpected love, unexpected partnership, either something that we totally ignored or we didn't take it seriously at all. So it was like a missed opportunity that we are not even aware of, that simply just flew by us in the past, that comes back in a big way. And surprise, surprise, not because Juno retrograde, not only can we identify that, oh my goodness, I had this opportunity in the past and I was not even aware of it. But the surprise of now being aware and being able to embrace it. But at the same time, this can also play out in a totally different way, where I don't necessarily want to say ignore all the lessons of the past, but if we do not allow the lessons of the past to frighten us or to make us like really closed and rigid, surprises can come in our lives in so very many different ways, especially from career, colleagues, work, lucrative associations. Maybe we find a highly skilled professional and the deal is done. You do this work for me and I pay you. And out of that comes actually not just the original intent, but a big romance, a love story. This aspect can also really heal certain kind of relationship patterns, not necessarily a relationship, an existing relationship, but relationship patterns which might have traumatized us at one point. This aspect is really good to heal boss traumas, where we had a really bad boss and it left such a sour or bitter taste in our being that we want to stay away from any such power game, where we don't want to have a boss anymore, or we simply feel rejection to any kind of boss that might enter our lives, any authoritarian figure who reminds us of a bad boss. This pattern can heal that by getting a boss who is so loving or whatever that it just erases the horrible pattern that we had in the past. However, this isn't that simple. This isn't that easy because another retrograde planetoid squares Juno, Vesta from the sign of Gemini, which says that, but we really need to think outside of the box, because Gemini, whatever this relationship or professional connection or whatever may be, it is dual in a way. We may not trust our immediate reaction to this. Like, this is where it comes in a certain duality, but that makes a lot of sense because that duality is the lessons of the past, which do matter quite a lot, which may say, no, 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 don't go ahead. Remember what happened back then and then. But the other side of Gemini is non-conformist, where, well, no one says it has to play out the same way. I'm a different person, I have a different mindset, and this person might be so attractive, so, Uranian, so, sexy in a not necessarily physical way, but their vibe, their way of thinking, their mindset. So this is how we are going to be challenged at the very beginning of the week. And another energy, a minor energy, and I'm so sorry to bombard you with this. Remember Pallas Athena at anaretic degree of Scorpio? She opposes Sedna, also anaretic Taurus. I have a separate video about Sedna's ingress into Gemini and then retrograding back to Taurus, which I've done in summer last year. Check it out if you are so inclined. But this is where Sedna is about sacrifice. Sedna is about, all the injustice, all the, let's say, even toxicity that we have to, on a daily basis, protect ourselves from or to live with it. Now, Sedna's, if I, outside of Sedna's myth, where she had her fingers chopped off, etc., etc., Taurus's nature. Nature has a really unique creature, if I'm not mistaken, named the tiger butterfly. Now, when the tiger butterfly is a caterpillar, it has to feed only, it can only feed on that, on the leaves of an extremely toxic tree, which kills anything, basically. It protects itself from any kind of pest because it's that heavily toxic. The caterpillar has no choice but to poison itself and survive it. And, by the end of its caterpillar cycle, it it can eat freely. It's immune to the poison because it already lived on that. However, when it becomes a butterfly, it doesn't have to eat anymore leaves and stuff like that because it eats pollen, right? But the toxin is within it's deeply woven into its being, so much so that if the tiger butterfly accidentally ends up in the spider web, the spider immediately cuts it out and frees it because it knows that even touching it would mean instant death. That's how poisonous it is. So no other predatory insect or bird actually touched the tiger butterfly. This is basically what Sedna's opposition to Pallas Athena means. Just put it into context in real life. Understand the analogy of it. Something in your life that truly challenged you to survive the bad, the toxicity on a daily basis without having any choice. That gave you a superpower. That gave you almost like a divine strength that this aspect is highlighting. And the opposition, it's your choice what you do with it. Okay, now I'm really continuing the horoscope here. So I'm so sorry for this long philosophy and the planetoids and all of that, but I find these very, very important. But of course, that's just me. Let's move on to the 7th. So on the 7th, we do have where this Mars perfects its sextile with Neptune. And more importantly, you cannot see it on my screen, but the moon will move up on this day, on the 7th, and make a conjunction with Mars. So that means that the moon is going to be combust. Something is really going to spark our feelings. But in the context where Mars squares Eris, that is obvious that what's going to happen. But this has such a beautiful side to it because we get really on a soul level ambition and we do something with the help of our soul, our spirituality, our alchemy, our belief in ourselves, etc., etc. So this is a really good aspect, even if it may have another side that where something just really sparks our anger. A soul level anger even, so not just simple anger. On the 8th, moving on, this is when we have the saving grace of the week, where Venus perfects her perfects her trine with Uranus. Surprises in love, surprises in career, surprises in work, surprises from other people, especially who in one way or another are superior to you in rank, within a job, within an industry, within even family. Capricorn is the symbol of the father. So this can be really, really beautiful surprises, but it's still Uranus. It will shock you. It will make you think outside of the box. It can also represent where it is your higher thinking, your epiphany, your ingeniousness, your eureka moment, your sudden realization, you figuring out something, or you deciding to show the world or put it into context, your originality and authenticity that rewards you handsomely one way or another. Just that the danger with the Venus and Uranus trine, it is a flowy aspect, but don't get way too hyped. This is when, let me give you an example. Maybe you just out of the sudden, out of the blue, have a Cupid arrow shot into your heart, let's say. But this is where it's wonderful, it's stimulating, it's so romantic. But this is where you have to have real hopes. Every high will have a low. So take it in a as disciplined way as you can. I'm not saying don't be hopeful, don't be delighted, don't give into joy, but don't expect this to be permanent because this can be like a one moment, the spur of a moment. But this is also where we have the Sun squaring Uranus. This is where, on one hand, the inconveniences of life, where something may happen, again, why not something really, really positive, something that sparks your interest, but it is very, very costly. Uranus in the sign of Taurus, and also Uranus trine Venus. Venus's currency cost, etc., etc. You want to spend the money, but it's so expensive. It's not that you regret it, but it will unstabilize your finances. Or for some people, Uranus trine Venus. Either you want to buy something, you want to make a big investment, and you've been searching for this for quite a long time. It's here, and you find you wake up to the fact that you find yourself in the position that, do I go ahead or don't I? Do I make the leap of faith or don't I? Even if the opportunity seems like proper, good, what you've been asking for, or something way better than you've been asking. Uranus, the surprise factor. Still, you have this uncertainty. You're not sure if you can risk or not. You're not sure if it will play out. And why? Because the Sun in Aquarius receiving a square exactly from Uranus, the ruler of this sign, and we must not forget that the sun is in exile in the sign of Aquarius, so it's struggling quite a lot. Uranus is like being hit like the lightning bolt. Of course you're confused. It stuns you. So even in a positive way, a big opportunity stuns you and you don't know what to do. But this is where you need to contemplate, etc., etc. Mercury still conjunct Pluto can be very helpful in this sense, because if there are things that you know 1,000,000% that are not worth it, well, that will help you in the decision. However, another expression of this energy might be where Aquarius, people, how you're connected to social connections, acquaintances, whatever you're part of, bombarding you with requests or communication where something is so tumultuous, information, communication, etc., that it simply, how should I say, it debilitates you, it stresses you out, severe anxiety, panic attacks, even. And I'm so sorry to say this, but this is part of the energy. Panic attacks, restlessness, sleeplessness, even though sleeplessness might not necessarily be true for every person, because some people actually escape from the anxiety by sleeping. But for other people, this may be impossible because the anxiety is just going to work and work and work their brains. Mercury loves being an Aquarius, but it's still hyper, very hyper. So expect a lot of hyper thinking, if that makes sense. And being stressed out by people, very stressed out. Being stressed out by finances, being stressed out by, any Taurian expression where you're not sure and there's a certain kind of duality. It in a way that it can truly go either way. And also, this is where the moon conjuncts Pluto. Even if you cannot see it in a few hours, on the 8th, it will conjunct Pluto. So we feel something very, very intense, or we feel totally powerless, stunned. Remember the lightning bolt hit? It stuns us. We don't even know how we feel. Moon conjunct Pluto. This can be in a positive way or in a negative way, but chances are with Aquarius both at the same time. Now moving on to the 9th. I'm not gonna show this because I spoke about this earlier, where Ceres and Pallas Athena change signs. Pallas Athena, I didn't mention this, but Pallas Athena uh, entering into the sign of Sagittarius, taking Ceres's place, that's such a good energy, because she adds her very down to earth and wise approach to anything that was a problem linked to the sign of Sagittarius. For example, all of the legal issues, the international courts of justice, everything that went on in the European Parliament, in The Hague, and stuff like that. Pallas doesn't solve the problem, but she adds a very rational and a very wise approach to it. This is where she brings out the wisdom, which is absolutely wonderful. And the 9th is relevant for a different reason, but this is where either on the 9th, so put it in the context of where you live on the planet, or the 10th, where I live, it's on the 10th. So for me, it's the 10th. We have that very shocking Uranian new moon in the sign of Aquarius. I'm not going to speak about this because I have a separate video. If you want and are so guided, check it out. But I do need to mention the Sabian symbol because I don't know why I'm obsessed with that. Where we have a woman, and the woman is very important because it's representative of the divine feminine. It's representative of creational energy, but also something that is very specific to a woman A female, even in the animal kingdom, is the tolerance. It is very widely known that females have much greater tolerance than males. And we can see this in the animal kingdom in so very many ways. Now, I have to use a really horrible example, so please forgive me for this, but let's say back in a lot of years, maybe hundreds of years, some farmers had to beat their horses because some horses were so stubborn, etc., etc., and of course their life depended on the horse. A female horse usually had very little reaction to the beating. She went on with her jobs, her tasks. A male horse usually had to take 2-3 days off because you know what I mean. If not, sometimes the male horse even died of the beating. The same beating could never kill a female horse, but the male horse was, dead. So I'm so sorry for this horrible example, but this shows that the divine gave an extra resilience and tolerance to the divine feminine, which is absolutely wonderful. And I do believe that the Sabian symbol highlights this not in a physical way, but in a spiritual, on a soul level, and even intellectual way. So again, the Sabian symbol. A woman disappointed and disillusioned still finds the courage and the strength to go on in a seemingly empty life. That is where a woman can dig up hope from a place of mystery, even when there is no zero hope, a woman can still find that very special Aquarian strength. Of course, the sorry, I'm lost for words. I don't want to say the glyph of Aquarius because it's not the glyph, but the pictogram, how most artists depict Aquarius and the constellation the where a goddess is pouring water down on earth or whatever. For example, the star card in tarot, that god, it's the female energy pouring the hope, because that water is the hope. That water is elevated emotion. That is within the strength of each and every woman. So the Sabian symbol is so beautiful, even though we will need this because Uranus squaring the new moon. A big truth, a big realization, a big shock that will, of course, banish false hope or hope which can no longer be manifested. So it's not an easy energy, especially collectively, especially that Uranus conversing with the sun and moon in this way can cause earthquakes, seismic activity, weird weather phenomenon, and also malfunction of technology in so very many ways. Now, also on the 10th, there is a certain kind of energy which I find very, very fascinating and interesting. This is where, Mars in astrology is usually the planet which activates everything that it touches. It energizes, it gives strength and power of manifestation, especially in Capricorn, the stage of manifestation. So Mars from the 9th or 10th is traversing through Pluto's shadow path, where Pluto was just recently retrograde, and Pluto went through its shadow path in Capricorn, and now Mars adds a totally different layer on that. So it's intense. It is not easy, especially in anything that has to do with top-down authority, governments, big corporations, states, etc., etc. This means like mass fire, when you fire people, I'm so sorry, but this Uranian activity is really fogging my mind and I cannot find the words. When mass, when you fire a lot of people at the same time from big companies. So we can expect that, but in a very surprising fashion, where there's this huge company which is so prosperous and every employee gets a really good salary, and surprise, surprise, from one day to the next, you're fired in mass. You know what I mean? So this will be very interesting on the world stage to observe. Needless to say that Venus is also preparing to go through the same path as Mars, where they will dance together in the sign of Aquarius. But before they dance together, before they even enter, Mars takes the lead like the man in the dance, and Venus slowly follows up. Why is it important? Because Mars is the activation principle, but Venus is the passive principle. The repercussions felt are Venus, materially speaking, or in any other way. So we can expect mass loss of employment, let's say, on the world stage. But this is sometimes it's not when the employees are fired. Sometimes it's when the employees abandon. So it can go either way. But speaking about Venus, this is another hard aspect. Venus holds a semi-square with Saturn. But this semi-square is, even though it's hard, the disillusionment factor, or what determines people to quit, or what determines companies to fire their employees, that's a reality check. That is a positive kind of reality check, because it shows you the reasons of all the limitations and ultimately why it's better this way. You know what I mean? But facing those truths, especially when they are revealed, is not very easy. Finally, we get to the 11th, and this is where another aspect is beginning, an aspect that will stay with us all of February, and it's not very easy. Before I get to that, sorry, the moon conjunct Saturn also on the 11th. Here you can see this. And this moon and Saturn conjunction is important because the moon conjuncted throughout the week Venus, Mars, Pluto, Mercury, Sun, and that energy just stresses us out on a soul level. We feel so very many feelings at the same time, and Saturn, especially in the sign of Pisces, where the moon loves to be, grounds it. It helps us to, at least emotionally speaking, to settle down a little bit, to calm down a little bit. This can mean a bit of melancholy, absolutely, but if melancholy is still better than anxiety, you know what I mean? But moving on, this is where Chiron starts in a serious way conjuncting the North Node in the sign of Aries. Now, this is absolutely wonderful for healing. And I'm not going to speak about the healing and the wound, how to treat the wound, etc., aspect, because so very many astrologers out there speak about that. I have to be the doom and gloom astrologer that has to speak about a certain expression of Chiron in the sign of Aries, which very few analyze or speak about because of obvious reasons. In Aries, Chiron is also the wound giver. So there is going to be a lot of wounding. A lot. Because Aries is the sign of the warrior. Aries is the sign of the law. North Node, to go forward, to follow our path, to follow our calling, our own sovereignty, individuality, independence. We are willing to take on any wound, as deep as it goes. So this is the wound giver aspect, where Being wounded will not discourage anymore, but at the same time, this is where sometimes, for the sake of moving forward, we have to give the wound. We have to be the aggressor. We have to be the, let's say, the Hercules who wounded Chiron himself. And you might say, isn't this ridiculous? Well, let me give you an example. You're in a marriage. You love the person dearly as a brother, sister, whatever. But Aries, sensually or physically or for what you want to do in your life, it's a prison. You know that when you tell this to your husband, wife, it's going to wound them immensely, and you still have to give that wound. You have no choice. This is a primary example where it is what it is. This is where Aries is the energy of the self. If the self wants to go on, Aries in the sign of Aries, authentically true to who you are deep inside, if the situation means that you need to give the wound, you need to give the wound. So, yes. So finally, we come to the end of this horoscope. Thank you so very much for staying with me until this moment. Thank you for all your love, all your support. If you'd like to support my channel, you can donate on the PayPal link in the description below. With this, I'm wishing everyone a really powerful and strong new moon, so you can find the strength to go on wherever fate guides you with the specifics of Uranus, and also wishing everyone a lot of wisdom this week, because we're gonna need wisdom more than ever. Thank you. Until next time. Bye for now.